I'm Josie Rose C. You can find me on twitch.tv/Josie Rose C. I am excited to be here, throw in some important expertise and dunk on some really awful Republicans. This is gonna be fantastic, and we got permission because we're the Transl Squad. So I love this.
True.
Very excited to debut here today with everybody else. I'm Luxander. If you haven't heard of me before, I'm on YouTube, not on Twitch. I'm outside of the Twitch streamer sphere, but I'm non-binary, and I'm here to help support the Progressive Victory Fund 2022.
And we've all come together here because we've all been really concerned about the rise of anti-trans legislation across the United States, whether it's on the local, state, or national level. And frankly, we're kind of sick of it. And you know, we're all trans here, and if the flags didn't give that away, at any rate, and we're here to try and make a difference, to do what we can to, I don't know, stand up for ourselves. Is that a fair way of putting it, folks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a very fair way to say it. This is something that we have been, I think one thing I like to say is, like, for too long, the Republicans have controlled the narrative of like what it is to be trans, and trying to like paint us in a certain way. And I think it's a perfect opportunity to start dunking back because of the fact that the Republicans are on their back heel. So hit them while they're down. Let's do it. This is, we're not called the Transl Squad for nothing.
Absolutely.
So we're super excited.
And this is a project we've all been working on it for a while, and I've been trying to reach out to different trans creators, and we've got a whole bunch of people interested. But you know what? It was time today to kick it off with whatever we got, with whoever we can get. And you know what? We're calling on all of you to join us as well. And you can do that in a couple really easy ways, because our goal tonight is to get people signed up for essentially participating and volunteering in local, state, and national campaigns to get progressives and leftists elected wherever we're needed, really, which is frankly everywhere. And so we're here to give you the tools to connect you with local campaigns that are actually going to make a difference. Okay, so we're here. You can join the Discord server, Progressive Victory Discord. We're working with them because they have a really great set of tools, and frankly, they approached us in the background, and we're just like, hey, we want to help you do really cool things. And I like doing cool things. I think my companions here like doing cool things, and so we're doing this.
Yeah, and this is a great opportunity for us to really, a lot of us, on Twitch, we talk about praxis, and it's like, what can we do? What can we do as a community to actually do something? And this is kind of the perfect thing. We got amazing people. More people are going to be coming through the show as we progress with further episodes. And this is an opportunity where we can all unite as communities and actually do some real good. Actually coordinating, doing, canvassing via phones, text, and different organizational types. And that's what that Discord is all about. So if you haven't yet, please go to translsquad.com and join us, because we're actually doing some really, really good stuff here.
Yeah. For those of you who just heard that website name for the first time, that's right, translsquad.com. When you go there, you will find a large interactive map of the United States. It shows little blue pins, basically, representing each person who's signed up to try and canvass in whatever way they have available for local, state, and national campaigns. And you'll also see the 4 campaigns we're going to be focusing on tonight over the course of this stream. We're going to be talking about the different races in Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, and frankly, how these races are winnable and how we can at the very least, make a difference by highlighting just how horrendous some of our adversaries are in these places. Additionally, there is a sign-up sheet right below the interactive map where you too can become an active member of this movement, and it's great. You get to sign up however you feel comfortable, whether it's just texting, because I know a lot of people out there, they get a little social anxiety. You can text, you can call people, or you can go door to door, and all of that really truly makes a difference. So this is one of the ways we've been talking about getting involved. This is one of the ways you can get involved.
Absolutely.
If you're feeling like helpless at all, like I know that people in my chat frequently feel like I don't know what to do. This is kind of overwhelming. There's a lot going on. And the great thing about this is that all of that thinking of like, what can I do? Where am I needed? That stuff is done for you already. Like this whole process is set up in such a way that you can just be like, here's generally where I live. And they take it from there. And they say like, okay, here's what we need to know about you in order to hook you up with the local campaign. And then they help you like get directly in touch with the people that you need to be in touch with in order to contribute and help change things locally, like local politics, things that are important.
For sure. Also, additionally, we have Luxander, we have Josie, we have Riverboat Jack, but also we have Ashley Jubilee, who unfortunately has a bit of a sickness, a stomach thing. But may or may not be joining us in the near future here. But just shout out to Ashley as well, because she is an amazing resource. So just wanted to throw that in there while we're doing our introductions, or at least while we're still close to the introductions. It's really great to finally be working with the two of you in public. We've had so many behind closed doors, smoke-filled rooms meetings about our dastardly plans to save America. It's finally good to be out in public talking about this.
Absolutely.
Like I have a meeting. That's how it's been the last few weeks. It's like I have a meeting today. Excuse me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, folks, remember, I believe that we've all set up chat commands for map, !map in our chats to take you to translsquad.com, where you can sign up. And additionally, we should have progressive victory commands to direct you to the Discord, which I encourage you all to do. This is a great way to get involved. And for those of you who aren't aware of what the Progressive Victory Discord is like, basically imagine a place where you can go and basically get questions that you have answered about politics. Anything you have to ask about how to get involved, any anxieties you might have, there are people there to answer your questions. There are updated calls going on to kind of keep you abreast of different political situations. It's really, really good. So head over to Progressive Victory Discord. For those of you in my chat, it's !victory.
My chat commands are broken right now.
Okay.
Oh gosh. So if there's somebody from River's chat, or Jack's chat, or Alexander's chat that wants to come in here and drop those links for us, that would be really helpful. I haven't been busy at all. Okay.
Yeah. Josie and I both went to a wedding over the weekend, so we've been a bit swamped. But hello. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
We're finally kicking this off.
Finally kicking it off. So, we should talk about some of the things that we want to do. All right. So people know that they have to go on to transfersquad.com. They know the commands. Let's get into it. One of the things that I kind of wanted to talk about and maybe think about this is like kind of thinking like nationally and kind of going down and doing the zoom in to figure out where we're going to go. And one of the things I think that we need to talk about is how much the political climate has shifted over the last year. So if you think about it, at the beginning of this year, most people are like, oh, the Democrats are going to lose. We're going to lose the Senate. We're probably going to lose the House. And it's going to be a total disaster You had Manchin holding things up, Cinema holding things up, and Biden just wasn't getting anything through. And it seems like through the stroke of a miracle or magic or whatever you want to believe, we had a situation where we've had a complete almost 180 in the way people are perceiving the strength of the Democratic Party, and also just the inept failures of the Republican Party, which we cannot forget. And I've actually, as a cynical optimist, I'm like, is there hope? Is there a opportunity here that is really going to show that we can win this? And before I ask response on this, is I think the most important measure that I think is the most interesting in my opinion is the polls nationally of what voters care about. And the number one thing voters care about is protecting democracy. And that's huge. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something to think about, that, when I said, let's hit them while they're down, because I think they really are on their way back and falling back.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that's really surprising about some of those national polls is, or not even national polls, but just on a national level, we're seeing a lot of members of Congress, actually conservative members of Congress, starting to kind of back away from a national abortion ban position, which is kind of indicating that some of them feel like it's not as politically viable as they thought it was to actually back these abortion bans, because we're getting stories every week about some congressperson being asked by someone, what do I do if I'm having I'm pregnant, but it's not a viable pregnancy, and I'm now expected to carry that all the way to term. How do you suggest that I talk with my children about that? And there's really no good answer to that.
No.
There's nothing that makes them look good in that interaction, and it's causing, I think, some amount of wakefulness, dare I say, wokeness, to seep into conservative circles regarding, just what their chances are if they maintain these hardline positions going into 2022. And I think that is also something to hope for, or to, not to hope for, but to take some hope in, because races that were previously being seen as unwinnable are now slowly shifting, or in some cases even rapidly shifting, to look far more within reach in the next couple months than they were even like a month and a half ago.
Speaking of votes that we were not expecting to win, like, I'm from Kansas. We had an abortion amendment they tried to pass an amendment to make it so that they could legislate abortion more. And we came out and we defeated it. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed, like right when I joined the Progressive Victory Discord, is that they prompt you to select roles of like, where do you live? So when that vote came up, I got a ping from their server saying like, hey, by the way, this vote is coming up. You should pay attention to that. So really, like, there are a lot of different states on like the state level, or even smaller than the state level, where there's anti-trans legislation going on, like generally anti-progressive legislation. Other states are probably going to try to enshrine abortion in the Constitution, or there's going to be increasing challenges to that. And I know that we were, in some of our talks in the background, we were talking about a couple of different states where there's like, maybe we could actually make a big difference in these states, because, what happens if like Kansas turns purple? What would happen? Not likely, but maybe like in Pennsylvania, we might be able to make a bigger difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's this is, I think, one of the most fertile upset territories for us going into 2022, and where a lot of volunteers signing up could legitimately make a difference. For those of you who aren't aware of what's going on in Pennsylvania, basically the only thing keeping Pennsylvania from going hard line on like basically every conservative issue is the fact that they have a Democratic governor who is basically kung fu vetoing all of the nastiest legislation that is being passed by the House and Senate there, whether it's bans on trans girls, again, specifically trans girls, from playing on female sports teams, or trying to ban, and I'm going to quote the name of the bill here, prohibits instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity for K through 5 students. Basically, a Don't Say Gay bill of Pennsylvania's very own.
I think that one also makes any discussion of gender identity up through senior year not allowable. So it's not just more expansive than the K through 3rd grade in Florida. It goes K through 5, but also no discussion of transgender issues in any public school, basically.
Yeah, it is very much a child of like the Ron DeSantis school of just hardline anti-LGBTQ anything, really. Ron DeSantis himself actually went to campaign in Pennsylvania, trying to rally for Doug Mastriano, who is possibly one of the worst people in our current political climate. Like, Doug Mastriano is known for...
Laura Loomer would have been.
I mean, essentially.
She almost like 4% in that Florida. That was scary.
Yeah.
Too close.
But like Doug Mastriano,
right. He's awful.
He's hardline anti-anything queer. He's also he's leaned a bit into anti-Semitism. His campaign advisors have been caught talking about like Jewish conspiracy. Like it is a wretched hive of scum and villainy, to be sure.
Yeah, and he was president at January 6th as well, wasn't he? I believe. I might have to fact check that one really quick, but I was pretty sure that he was present there. Fact check me, please, now. But this is one of those things that we were talking about where that national tenor is like making sure that we win these really important seats, because you're absolutely right. People like Doug Mastriano, people like Laura Loomer, there's so many horrible humans that are like so close to like taking victory that these little shifts in our work that we put in, that's just why you should join transosquad.com, because these are getting really close. And it's one of those things where when you look at we are like a Dr. Oz lucky, right? Like Dr. Oz is so miserable and his campaign is so bad that Democrats are excited to vote for Fetterman, and they're just voting for the Democratic governor as well. Mm-hmm. Right. And that is really, really important on the ticket. And so these are the things that we have to think about. And going back to the activism, we are 77 days from the primary, I believe. And it is corner. So right now, people are really starting to look at politics. That's why these polls are getting more and more accurate, because people are like, oh yeah, I want to actually say what my opinion is on this race. And, and if you have the opportunity to talk to a voter and actually talk to these people in these really important states, then you may be able to say, hey, talk to the voter, and then they may get a call saying, hey, we need to vote for this other person. And, it's that community building that we're able to do as, people who understand, the internet and how to communicate with people. There's a reason why millennials and Gen Zers are starting to win elections now. It's because we know how to talk to each other. And that's why we're here. Because we see it, right? We're like, yep. Oh my gosh, these are just a couple hundred votes away from like being a complete disaster for all the trans people in Pennsylvania.
Well,
that's scary.
And not only that, but like, I think maybe as an unfortunate side effect of the lacking of popularity around the overturn of Roe v. Wade, a lot of Republicans are now pivoting to their favorite current punching bag, which just happens to be trans people. So what we're seeing is very much a hyping up of anti-LGBTQ rhetoric. Just the other day in Texas, there was a man who appeared at a school board meeting going on a rant about essentially, I'm not going to directly quote him here, but essentially talking about if they're teaching woke gender stuff in schools, that the woke movement needs to be sexually assaulted. I'm very lightly paraphrasing that. But it is...
But we are sexual predators, by the way.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
But when it comes to Mastriano and stopping him from becoming governor, one of the latest poll numbers coming out really, I think, highlights just how precarious the state is. One of the latest polls from Emerson shows that Josh Shapiro, no relation to Ben, is up 47% to Mastriano's 44%, but that's only a difference of 3%. Like, getting just a handful more volunteers out could boost that number by a couple percentage points and make it a much safer looking election in the Pennsylvania governorship. So I very much encourage you all to volunteer, especially if you're living in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. And, when Mastriano used his victory speech when he won the primary to mock Rachel Levine.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know who Rachel Levine is, Dr. Rachel Levine, or Admiral Dr. Rachel Levine, is the first trans person ever confirmed by the Senate to serve as the Deputy Health and Human Services Secretary of the United States, and to go after the top administrative officer that we have that is a trans person is a coordinated assault of trying to go after the people who are leading when it comes to representation and governance of trans folks. And it's something that, this isn't these culture war attacks. They're going after our leaders. They're going after us. So we have to make sure we strike back, and go to transfsquad.com and sign up now. And join this fight.
To support more trans people in office, right? So we don't have just one person for them to attack. Because I also know in Pennsylvania, there's someone running for currently running for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. Their name is Izzy Smith Wade-L, first a non-binary state legislator if they get elected, and first Black person representing Lancaster County in the state house. So on local levels, you all have the ability to contribute, volunteer, get involved. The other great thing about getting into a volunteer position is building community. Because I know a lot of us are really lonely. A lot of us are very much feeling isolated right now. And this is an excellent opportunity for you to meet people. One of the things the Victory Fund is doing is they're vetting these campaigns so that you all who are trans who want to get involved, we're double checking if how does your team handle pronouns and stuff like that? Are the trans volunteers going to be safe volunteering here? So that you'll be put into situations where you're more likely to be around people who are progressive and already trans friendly and share their pronouns and stuff. You might meet other trans people volunteering for this. You never know. That's what the map is so great for on the Transl Squad website, because it can show you oh, I didn't realize that so many other people near me were volunteering. Or maybe if you're in a place where there aren't as many volunteers, you can say we need more dots on that map, get out there and meet people.
Yeah. As an old school type of organizer, somebody who's been on the ground and canvas door to door, knocking, just making my shoes and knuckles bloody, walking so much. One of the things that I love is when you start building that action and you start going into the communities and you start seeing, I guess, your comrades that are knocking doors with you, and you really do build. I've met the most incredible humans on the planet who go into their communities and actually make a difference to talk to their neighbors. And when you look at those dots and you know that your contribution to those dots, it really is you're taking territory, because this is a war for our rights. And so when you see those dots, that's us shoring up our lines.
You're part of an avalanche.
Yeah.
Snowflake and part of the avalanche.
That's right.
And I know that there are people out there who think that, when trans people say something along the lines of this is a war for our rights, that we're being hyperbolic, that we're being hysterical. But I'm going to give a direct quote from Doug Mastriano, okay? Josh Shapiro thinks it's okay to add gender confusion to our little kids in school. They want you to pick your pronouns. Are you kidding me? Stop this. it's okay for your kids to be sexualized in the classroom. That's Josh Shapiro. That's the Democratic extremist. That they literally do not want kids to know that trans people exist. And I can tell you from experience that locking that knowledge away from kids is a surefire way of getting a lot of sad, angry, and possibly suicidal kids. But that's the goal. That the goal is to have us in that position. The goal is to make more kids who want to harm themselves. The goal is to shut us away back at our homes where we're too afraid to go outside. The goal is to intimidate us into non-existence. And that's being, I think, maybe even a bit charitable to the conservative position on trans people. And like, it's not even just trans people. Doug Mastriano talks about having law enforcement go around the state and arresting anyone suspected of being a migrant or an immigrant, or
Yeah.
And you know what that means, right? It's just going around the state having thugs with badges arresting black and brown people. That's it. That's all it is. And like, it's not even hidden anymore. I mean, Doug Mastriano has straight up said numerous times that gay marriage needs to be made illegal. These people, it's not just trans people. It's not just if you're a non-white minority. It's if you are any kind of non-cis, non-hetero, non-white person. This is, they want you to believe that this country is not yours, and that is, excuse my language, a fucking lie. And it's about time that we got involved to let them know just how big of a lie it is.
Absolutely. And when you got people like Ron DeSantis going up to Pennsylvania and doing rallies for these folks, like that should give you enough of a signal right there. And they are sending people, like, because Ron DeSantis unfortunately is one of the quote unquote big guns of the Republican Party, because he's one of the few, Florida governor senators of one of the largest populous states in the South to actually go. But when they're sending him, that means that they're on the ropes, right? And going all the way back to like giving evidence on they're on the ropes. The Republican Senate Committee, so the National Republican Senate Committee, which is basically the equivalent of the Democratic Senate, their DSCC. So essentially the Republicans' version. So they let former Governor or Senator Rick Scott manage that entire organization. And if you know anything about Rick Scott, he was a former governor of Florida. He's a complete fraud. He's frauded millions of dollars out of people for healthcare fraud and things of that nature. Pled the fifth over like 50 some odd times in that particular hearing when he was there in that time. So the Republicans thought it'd be a great idea to let a fraudster go in and handle their entire campaign war chest for all of the Republican senators across the country. Well, now they're definitely eating that, because they are pulling out tens of millions of dollars out of critical seats that they think that there may be a chance. They pulled $5 million from Dr. Oz, and they pulled money from Georgia. They pulled money from Arizona and Wyoming, I believe, as well. And they spent so much money in these sapphire blue states, and now they are completely losing their minds, because these Republicans have pretty much already said we've lost these seats, because they know they don't have the resources to do it. So what we can do now is to use the energy that we're at the top of the ticket, because the Democrats are actually spending more money now because we're actually going in harder, that we can now push everybody below those tickets too. So when we're talking about states like Pennsylvania, when we're talking about possible non-binary candidates and actually like changing the demographics of these states are now possible. And that's what's so important about what we're trying to accomplish as a unified movement. Because, if we can all coordinate and make 1,000 calls to a city council candidate that only needs 300 more votes to win, that's the difference. And it is this close. In a New York special election, a Democrat won by, I think, 2 points, and a seat a Republican was supposed to win. So these things are happening, but it is only happening because people are actually going out there and doing the work.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people are unaware of how much influence and power they have when it comes to getting out there and talking with people. Like how much of a difference that can actually make is hard to like overstate. Like it is the lifeblood of I think frankly our current democracy. Getting people out there to talk with others and put a human face on the costs of these policies. And by doing that, whether it's on the phone talking with someone or text banking or going door to door, just a handful of motivated people can actually turn the tide, especially on smaller local elections. And that's where we're aiming to do that all across the United States, but we need your help to do it. So !map in chat to get
That's right.
to transalsquad.com.
Transalsquad.com. All right.
We need to come up with like a jingle.
Oh my gosh. There's so many creative people. We should definitely be able to do that with all of our combined. Yeah.
So we have an excellent villain, I suppose, in Doug Mastriano, insofar as that he is possibly one of the most vile people in America right now. Again, it's 2022. Doug Mastriano believes that global warming is a democratic academic hoax. Okay, again, to reiterate, his campaign advisors are anti-Semitic conspiracy theorists. This is I'm not like exaggerating for effect here. This is about as close to like a cartoon villain as you can get in anywhere. Like
short of being a flat earther, he believes all of the worst things you can imagine someone believes politically.
Yeah, short of actually like growing like a spindly like mustache and tying women down to train tracks for fun, like he's about as close as you can get to a villain like that. And I think that we need to do everything in our power. We have, I would argue, almost a moral obligation to make sure that we do everything we possibly can to make sure that he is not elected as governor, and enables the absolute worst things imaginable in Pennsylvania.
It's super important, and on a personal note, I'm actually getting my bottom surgery. Like Pennsylvania actually has access, and trans people have the ability to do things there, but it's like on the edge, right? It could just be a matter of one election cycle and people could lose their access to these things. And it's kind of surreal because my stuff is scheduled 5 days, or no, not 5 days after, but November 15th. So I could essentially be going to Pennsylvania and knowing there's a Mastriano governor, and be like, oh man, last one's here, and it's really terrifying. But it's nice that I have the access now, but it could go away. It could go away.
And I think a lot of people don't really think about that when it comes to trans people. Like, oh, you could just one day like have your ability to go to the hospital and get the care you need taken away from you. I mean, like, how many of you have like sat awake late at night wondering whether or not like your hospital will just throw up its hands and be like, sorry, we can't legally give you that care. Sucks to suck, or in a state where like religious freedom is being trumpeted, oh, sorry, it's against my religious beliefs to provide you with medical aid that could help you in your transition, And this is, and we mentioned earlier that Ron DeSantis was campaigning in Pennsylvania. Well, one of the things that Ron DeSantis has done and championed in Florida that we're seeing start to proliferate across the United States in other conservative states is that he had trans healthcare essentially ruled as experimental, which invalidates its coverage under Medicaid. So if you are a poor person in Florida, you cannot access trans healthcare anymore, whether you are a child or an adult. Like it's not just a think of the children. No, their goal is to not deny all trans people healthcare.
All of it.
Yeah, all of it.
It's genocide essentially because they just want to stop our ability to exist.
Right. I mean, denying an entire minority group access to the healthcare they need to exist, I think would fall under that category, not in a non-hyperbolic sense. And on top of that, you have people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and we'll get into Georgia in a bit, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Georgian candidate and is currently in Congress. But she was on Tucker Carlson and talking about her new bill that she's trying to introduce that would essentially make it illegal on a nationwide basis to provide trans healthcare to youth, to trans kids.
Well, it was all the way until 21.
Yeah,
and
I think they also took it off of Medicaid too.
Yep.
Like that's also part of it. So all adults across the whole country who are on Medicaid.
Well, and not only that, it would also make it illegal to receive training in like gender health services at universities. It would also make it illegal for foreign gender health experts to come into the United States. It effectively eliminates the ability for any trans person in the United States to get the healthcare they need by cutting off the healthcare providing services at the root. Like the very training for even like mental health care providers would be cut off, for doctors, for surgeons. Like we're talking a complete destruction of the ability of trans people to exist in the United States. And that is what Marjorie Taylor Greene was pushing. And not only that, she has co-sponsors. And she was on Tucker Carlson promoting this to the entire country, mainstreaming this ideology into the conservative movement. And so this is something that is coming for all trans people. Even if you live in a state that you think is democratic and safe, it might not be that safe if we don't come together right now and do something. Because I think that 2022 is that turning point for us. 2022 is when we have to get ourselves into the game, as socially anxious as we might be, as scared as we might be. Now's the time before it gets exponentially worse.
Whatever you are scared of socially is nothing compared to what is going to happen if we don't fix it right the fuck now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a perfect segue on what we mean when we say get involved in this particular case. We're talking about flipping state legislatures like Pennsylvania, like we just were talking about on like the rights of what we are as humans. So what you do when you get to the transosquad.com and is you will fill out a form that will get you into a Discord server, and you can use !maps to look that up. And this isn't just like, oh, go to this Discord and you're going to put the work. No, we're building community there too. So this is an opportunity for us to be able to have VCs that are always active, organizers talking about how is the most effective way to get through to their neighbor, or how to the best way to get resources for flyers, things like that. Small, tiny things to large things, such as how do I get involved and become an actual elected member, right? These these are the things that we learn and share with each other, because one of the biggest things that we have in the movement that is very hard is the resources of people that know what to do in an election, right? I think all of us here are competent enough to be able to go to a ballot box and vote. That's the bare minimum, right? That's the go get registered, go do all these things and vote. The real skill and talent is when you can multiply that vote into 10 by getting other people to vote as well. And what you and it is such a bonding experience to be able to learn something so critical as understanding how to win a local election or a state election or a national election, however size that you want to go. And guess what? And if you like it, you may have just created a career set for yourself, something that will allow you to actually do this for a living, right? These are the things that this is a good opportunity to be like, huh, I've been wanting to get involved in politics, but I have no idea how. This is how. This is how you do it. Politics is showing up, and this is an opportunity for you to show up with like-minded individuals that want to make sure that we fight and do this win and actually fight together in solidarity without false promises and hope, rather than, hey, this is going to take hard work, but when we do, we save lives.
Yeah.
And that's what we got to fight for.
I mean, on top of that, one of the best things about this Transl Squad movement is the fact that we have access to, not just within our trans community, but with Progressive Victory having our backs and like kind of facilitating a lot of this, we have access to a very deep and large pool of political knowledge, how to actually get these things done. We have people who have worked on numerous political campaigns who are there to, walk you through the first steps, to mentor you, to get you into the volunteering mindset. We have people who have sworn to respect you and to treat you with the dignity you deserve and to fight for you. And we've put them all together at your disposal on the Progressive Victory Discord. And on top of that, we have all kinds of political acumen within, the trans community itself here. We are trying to put ourselves out there. We're trying to make our knowledge available, and we're trying to do whatever we can with whatever we have to make this as successful as possible, to actually affect change in our political system, which I know feels daunting and impossible when we're by ourselves, but when we work together, we can make this happen.
Like the avalanche thing I said kind of flippantly, but I mean like we're going to weaponize you as a group of people who want to get involved. Like, they don't have any idea what's coming. They're running on this anti-trans legislation. They don't know how pissed off you are. And they're gonna know. And like, you're gonna go out there and you're gonna get someone registered to vote who previously didn't give a shit about any of this. You're gonna be like, hey, by the way, Roe v. Wade, do you want to protect it? Like, we need to vote on this local thing. Like, our state is trying to pass an amendment or whatever. Like, that type of thing. Getting you to a place where like, you are a political threat. Like, as a group of people, like, and you don't have to be trans explicitly. Like, you can be an ally to trans people and still be like, we're going to fuck shit up together. We want to basically just like, suddenly there's a hammer. There didn't used to be a hammer. Like, we forged one together and we're going to start like bashing things with it until things are like, we're going to beat this system back into shape, right?
Yeah. I mean, Republicans have said, for a while now that they need to fearmonger against trans people. Well, guess what? We'll become something that they should fear on a political level. We will frustrate their plans. We will be the sugar in their gas tank. We will be the nails popping their tires. We will be the things that stop them from achieving their goals politically across all of America. And I think that is wonderful because, we're all very sweet, but you pour enough sugar in a gas tank, that engine ain't running, okay? And let's get to it. And the best way you can do it is by doing !map in chat and going to translsquad.com. And in that, you can see where all of the blue pins, those are people who have signed up to fight for you and fight for your right to exist and survive and thrive. And those pins are not pointing to exact locations, so don't worry, you're not doxing yourself. But then you fill out the form, and you can decide whether you want to text bank, phone bank, or canvas in person. And all of those things help immensely. And on top of that, you can then get plugged into Progressive Victory's Discord, and they will help educate you about the political process, arm you with the knowledge and the materials you need to make a difference in local, state, and national campaigns, and then unleash you to make a difference in your communities. And I think if you are currently doomering, this will be something that gets you on a little bit of hopium.
You're muted, Josie Hun.
Wow, sorry.
Oh, you were muted for a while. I wasn't sure if that was.
I was talking to my chat though.
Okay.
No, that was yeah. No, I think it's important to be said, like, this is an opportunity. If you're not even if you're trans, anybody who wants to get involved in any way is really. And I just want to also demystify it just a tiny bit. Like, we say it's hard work, right? And I think I've said that several times. And it's not because I don't want to sell you a hella goods. I'm not going to be like, if you do this one thing, the world will change. That's not what we're here to do, right? Mm-hmm. We're here to teach you a skill, right? And a skill that you're able to pick up, a skill that you can dabble in, a hobby, if you per se. You can do these things. And when we talk about like the experience that it takes, I've been working in politics for over 10 years now, personally, running for office. I've had my own political consulting firm and things like that. But when I first started, I went to the campaign office of a congresswoman that I later ran against. And I was like, hey, I want to help. And I was able to just sit there and shadow the field director of the campaign that ultimately helped me set up my entire career, right? Because I was like, oh yeah, field. That's what I'm going to be good at. That's what people need most help with. And I learned how to do it and able to communicate with folks. And it's just a really powerful thing. And it's something that takes time, but it's not a difficult process. It's simple. It's just not easy, if that makes sense, right? Or no, it's easy, but not simple. That's what it is, right? It's one of those situations where the motions are easy. And it's really sometimes just be like, oh yeah, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call 15 people. Is that we don't have to put a lot on you. If you feel like you want to make 15 calls because you've never made political phone calls, great. 15 calls is great. And then over time you get better and better. And then 15 calls turns into 60 calls, and then 60 calls turns into 90 calls, and then you're doing a phone bank on the weekend, right? Like, it can be that wonderful. And I've seen people start wonderful, marvelous careers volunteering from something like this. So I really do hope that if you're interested in making a difference and actually fighting for our rights, seriously, give this a try. Like, it's something that you will be able. The worst that's going to happen is you might make a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to find somebody that believes the same way. And it's a way to network and make sure that we're all together in a strong community. So, yeah.
Well, I think that brings us now to shifting focus from Pennsylvania over to Georgia. And Georgia is, frankly, riddled with issues. And I think that a lot of the suggestions we've just made for getting involved politically need to be contrasted with the recent swatting of Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I think I can speak for all of us when we say we condemn that sort of political violence. But that being said, if you are feeling in a similar way where you are so frustrated by a political candidate's position. This is what we are advocating for here. Joining up, canvassing, calling, text banking, getting involved socially with like-minded people. This is a perfect way to channel that frustration and rage in a productive way that is building community, that is positive. You are creating something. You are not destroying something. You are not attacking any one individual, because we need to be honest. Fascism is larger than one individual, and our movement therefore needs to be larger than any one individual as well. So yeah, do not SWAT. Very bad. No good.
I dispute the idea that she was even legitimately swatted. Like, I think that the use of this term is kind of overestimating what actually happened. Like, we talked about it on stream yesterday, and listen, they politely knocked on the door. There's video from inside her house, like, so you can see she knocks on the door, and you can see the police officer through the door. The first police officer that walks up to the door, he has his right hand down at his side and his left hand is holding the flashlight. So every time I hear about a swatting, it's like there were guns and they were in my face and they busted the door down, and like none of those things happened. Like they recognized that it was her address, and then they got together at a nearby intersection, all the police officers did, and then they showed up very calmly. So personal opinion, I think it's making much ado about nothing to say that she was swatted, but it was an attempt. Like, I'm not going to dispute there was an attempt, and unfortunately, I think it was someone from Kiwi Farms who was just trying to direct attention against trans people more, like as though she didn't already have a reason to attack us or anything. But like,
right.
Again,
would check out.
Nothing happened to her.
I mean, yeah, and the whole idea that this was like a trans like aggression as well was also used. And you know, in speaking about the whole Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, is like Marjorie Taylor Greene has proposed a bill in Congress, and I think we've talked about this before, and I think we alluded to it, but since we're talking about Georgia, like it's something that we have to talk about, is that she, you know, when you talk about all of these bans on medical procedures, like this is a national bill that will ban medical procedures for minors. Like
make it a felony. Make it a felony,
right? And there's even calls to make it higher. Why be at 21? Why 21? Why not 25? Right? And it goes back to, this is just to try to attack our existence. And it's really, really, really scary that now they're trying to even use possible false flags to basically make it seem like, oh my gosh, trans people are out to get her, when it's absolutely the opposite. They're out to get us. There was an offhanded comment that Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about how she wished monkeypox would kill more queer people. Like, you know, these are the things when she was lamenting at the fact that there were 3 shootings on July 4th and no shootings at Prides. Like saying it's not fair. Why did it not happen where it needed to happen?
Not that there weren't like Prides that canceled over threats or anything this summer. Not at all.
Right, exactly. And so like this is absolute evil that is being perpetrated from a member of Congress. And this isn't something that, bill. No, it started with 6 co-sponsors. She went on Tucker Carlson and it popped up to 14 or 16 the next day. So this is something that could gain traction. They're trying to make it a litmus test for the most radical of the most extreme Republicans, where it's like, do you believe that this bill should be existing? If so, then you get the endorsements of the most vile humans like Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and most likely Trump himself. So these are not just like, oh, they're just trying to signal to their most red meat conservatives. No, they're using these most radical bills as litmus tests to try to push their agenda to make sure that they are getting the right representatives to run in their primaries for them.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that they're going to pass right now. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene's law right now, probably not going to pass. If for no other reason than like Biden would have to sign it, and he probably wouldn't. And I don't think they have the veto proof majority or whatever. But someone asked in my chat a little while earlier, like, what are we supposed to do about national things like that? Like, what do you do about if a national law is trying to pass? Well, the answer is vote in your local elections, because your state, like the person who represents you, who goes to the government and says, actually, as a person who lives in this state, my constituents don't want there to be a national fucking ban on trans healthcare. So I'm going to vote against that. Like, that's why it matters for you to get involved in this way, where you're canvassing, you're voting, like you're doing all those things, because it does make a difference. Like, who you send from your state to the national level, like, it's going to make a difference. And yes, there's gerrymandering, and yes, it's annoying and it's bad. Like, my Supreme Court just reaffirmed a fucked up gerrymandered map, and it cannot be rewritten for 10 years. So like, trust me, there are barriers in your way. We're trying to reduce as many barriers as possible, because this process doesn't require you to go seek out volunteer opportunities. They're going to be brought to you effectively. All you have to do is sign up. You go to the Discord, you say, I live in Missouri and I want to get notifications for what's happening here, and that'll get you going.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to reiterate is that while we don't have a ton of hope in maybe unseating Marjorie Taylor Greene, her opponent isn't super likely to unseat her, Marcus Flowers. But we do have two other races in Georgia that are one being pretty winnable, the other being like we can imagine a victory. That it is, let us whisper of a dream, okay? And essentially we have the two big races to keep an eye on there are the race between Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams for governor of Georgia, and the race between Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker for the Senate in Georgia. And one of the good pieces of news coming out of Georgia is that Raphael Warnock is right now polling slightly ahead of Herschel Walker by about 3 points, which means, and there are about 7 to 8% undecided voters in that district. So again, this is a place where a small, highly motivated community of people coming together to canvass in person or phone bank or text bank can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
Sorry, no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
You were probably in the middle of that, Jack. Go ahead.
Well, and the other one is Brian Kemp, and in this case, it's not as rosy, but Stacey Abrams has proven to be a pretty tenacious underdog candidate. And right now she's down by about 5 points. But there's around 10% undecided voters. So there is a real possibility that progressives coming together and canvassing and volunteering for Stacey Abrams could upset the governor race in Georgia, which would be a tremendous win. For those who haven't been following, Brian Kemp has been passing anti-trans legislation in Georgia. You know, one of the most recent ones being essentially telling trans kids that they can't play school sports. And I know that seems relatively insignificant when we've talked about other issues, but what you have to understand is, especially if you aren't in the trans community, that the argument about trans kids in sports has never been because there's just a shocking number of Republicans who really believe in the integrity of high school sports. It's because they hate trans people. When you look at the research, there is no research that shows that trans kids have some sort of magical decisive advantage over cis kids when it comes to high school sports, or really any level of sports. And it has always been about maintaining the in-group, out-group mentality, making sure that trans people are kept at arm's length from their cisgender peers. Because as long as trans people are othered, you know, they can be scary. They can be monsters to cisgender kids who are being raised to think that gay people are well, they're weird and you shouldn't be friends with them, or like that kind of mentality can take root when you don't know anyone who's different from you, and that's the goal, right? It's the same goal that maintained like racial segregation. If you aren't having whites and blacks being friends with each other, well then you can fearmonger against that outgroup, can't you? I think we need to stop giving this a pass legislatively. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts more people than just trans people. Sorry, I should have let you finish. We just saw an instance in, what was it, Utah, I think, where some girl was better at a sport or got a spot on the team, and this, like, how bad soccer moms are, like soccer parents, sports parents, football dads. They're terrible people, and they're going to just weaponize this and be like, I think that girl is trans, actually, and then subject young people, trans and not trans, to like invasive probing of their genitals or like blood tests that nobody can fucking afford. It's vile, and I shouldn't have to say like it affects other people, so you should care about that. But like, it's true though that this is gonna. Usually the like biggest impact that this has is like an extremely racialized one. Also, as I think worth noting, like cisgender women who are black tend to have slightly higher like testosterone because the normative testosterone range is based on white women
and higher bone density too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like all of these like ideas about what's normative as a sex characteristic are all based on like white people with no variation allowed for race or whatever. So like it's going to be young black women who excel at sports who are going to be subjected to invasive testing. And then we've already seen at the national level or international level what happens. Caster Semenya, a cisgender woman with slightly elevated testosterone levels, like being forced to take a suppressant drug or not be able to participate in the sport. So these kind of changes do have sweeping effects beyond what is intended even. And what is intended is horrendous in the first place. It's like the intention is just to marginalize teenagers and make them feel bad until they kill themselves or conform. And that's basically the end of their playbook.
Yeah, it is one of those cases where like the fear mongering against trans people has been so effective that you have those soccer moms basically cheering and clapping at the prospect of a trans girl having her genitals looked at by like a strange man, never really being aware of the fact that like the majority of people that is going to affect they're going to be cis. Like the vast majority of anti-trans legislation gets employed against cisgender people because cisgender people statistically make up a larger percentage of the population, and people get misidentified as trans all the time by the we can always tell crowd. So like it's one of these situations where things have gotten so fucked up, have gone so beyond the pale that Republicans will cheer the idea of children having their genitals inspected by
they are the
strangers.
party of child marriage, so
yeah, that's fair. Fair. And I wanted to go back and talk about a little bit what we talked about when we were talking about those candidates is the pathway to victory. It's a phrase that consultants use a lot of times when it's like, what's the pathway to victory, right? And there's a lot of inputs, right? You could go into like the political science of like, okay, there's a lot of different inputs on what the pathway to victories look like. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that have been so interesting about the recent victories and how votes are happening is a lot of these political strategists that I know have no idea what's going to happen in some of these areas because there's been such a mass population migration since COVID, because our last major election was right before we locked down or like during COVID. So you have people working from home in places that aren't high as cost of living anymore. You also had the fact that Republicans are 3-1 less likely to have to be vaccinated. So therefore, you had a lot of older, unfortunately, older people who were majority Republican passing away from COVID. And you have a lot of population changes that weren't very well reported, right? You have the ability to say, okay, so and so may have passed away, but the voter rolls really don't reflect that. So there's going to be a lot of people who are like 3 out of 3 voters, meaning that they vote in every election, the last 3 elections, that are no longer alive. And so there could be a lot of election math being done by one, they're trying to reach out to somebody who's already passed away, or two, miss the fact that there are people who have moved into their district because of the fact that they're working from home and they don't need to go and live in a really expensive apartment in a major city anymore. So what we have here is a real unknown. And that's why it's so important that we do everything we can over the next 77 days to make sure that we get as many votes in the ballot box for these candidates that Jack was talking about, which was Walker, he is so in trouble because the Republicans also took money out of his ads. So right now you have a 6% split with, but it could get bigger with only political action. Stacey Abrams has been working directly with voter integrity and voter engagement, making sure people have the right to vote, including what you call voting curing votes, where there are votes that may have missed the step and were just on hold until something is resolved. So not only after the election, Stacey Abrams is also one of the best at making sure that people's votes get counted after the fact, because in Georgia, they'll try to take your votes and void them once you've already cast them. So that's the only reason Stacey Abrams is actually to be competitive, is because of her ability to rally activists, people on the ground. And then when you're talking about the unknowns of the migration of people with COVID, we, with our work, could see seats that nobody thought were going to flip. We're going to hear news reports of that all the time. Only if we support and work, though, and go on the transfersquad.com, right, and do this type of stuff. But we really do have an ability to catch them with their pants down, because the data that they have is bad data, because these systems are old. And some of the times, the only way you're going to be able to know is somebody into a district, talked on, hey, how long have you lived here? Have you registered to vote yet? Those are the things that exist. So that's why we are here to try to turn these seats, because there's so many unknowns that we could take advantage.
Yeah, and we really, in the case of Georgia, it's so important if we can get enough people volunteering in Georgia to unseat Governor Kemp, who is the incumbent. Things have gone through in Georgia that are frankly mind-blowing. For example, HB 1084 was signed into law. It's law now, okay? And what it specifically does is limit discussion on what are titled divisive concepts, specifically relating to race. Georgia literally passed a law that makes it illegal to talk about the racial history of America, which is, I don't know how to tell you how bad that is, but I think that if you have any shred of decency in you, you can kind of, you probably made a face, okay? It is awful. And that's not the only thing. We have what is called the Parents' Bill of Rights, which sounds pretty innocuous, right? But again, that is another kind of export from Florida, from Ron DeSantis's Florida. And what the Parents' Bill of Rights essentially does is it gives parents far more control over their child's classroom. And you might be thinking, well, that's great. I want more control over what my kid learns, except that the explicit purpose of this Parental Bill of Rights is to allow parents to go through curriculum and challenge individually pieces of the curriculum that are say, friendly to LGBTQ people. Meaning, if a parent has a problem with the fact that their kid is being taught that, queer people deserve just as much respect as straight people, they can go in and legally challenge that part of the curriculum. And you know what? I don't know if you guys know this, but teachers, they're not paid a lot. And teachers do not have the time to go to court every single time their curriculum gets challenged by every single individual parent. Meaning that any time that this is challenged, generally speaking, it's going to just be met with, well, we're going to remove that part of the curriculum and replace it with something else that's more palatable to parents like you. It's effectively...
They also don't do the curriculum at the beginning of the year. Is another thing that you all should be aware of. The teacher doesn't have a planned out whole fucking school year ready. They would have to check in like once a month, if not more often, to be like, what are you teaching this week?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is a mental nightmare.
It is. And, and this is something that they have been targeting for a long time. Like, they do not want educated teachers teaching children, right? Like, you can already, and I'll just say it, right? Because you can see it with Florida. In the state of Florida, there is a massive teacher shortage. I wonder why. Because teachers are losing their ability to have agency in the classroom to actually just be a gay parent or have a kid that's trans or gay. Like, having a photograph of your partner is now a point. Taking pride flags down, criminalizing all these different things. Like, teachers have had enough, and they're fleeing the state of Florida. They're fleeing. They're not moving. They're fleeing for the state of Florida. So get this. And I know we're going into Florida, we were talking about Georgia, but this is important about the teacher shortage, because Ron DeSantis wants to pass a bill that all you need to be able to teach a child is to be a veteran. Just to be a United States veteran. Okay, now let me break that down, since I'm a U.S. veteran. And I actually went and got my nuclear, engineering certificate and all that stuff with the Department of Energy, blah, blah, blah. I went to school for 2 years to do that. But I'm going to tell you right now, in the Army, there is 2-year enlistments. You can literally go into the Army for 2 years, go and do nothing but like the most low-level positions in the Army, barely getting through with an ASVAB. And now, Ron DeSantis wants that person who maybe served from 18 to 20-year-old to teach children education. Like, screw the certificates, screw everything. They are literally just trying to use ignorance as a weapon against children to prevent them from being able to critically think, so they can continue to be just as ignorantly willful as they are, as the people who are there. And it's terrifying, because it's happening everywhere. And when you hear those parental rights bills, that's a dog whistle. That's a dog whistle. That's what it is. And we have to fight back.
Just the reduction of expertise. Like, when you brought up that like parents are going to be reviewing the curriculum thing about the law, like, it reminded me, as Josie was just saying about that, like, you just have to be a veteran and you can become a teacher. It's like, why are we we're lowering the bar of like who understands education all the way down to the parental level. Like, just fucking homeschool your kids at that point. If you're going to be if you're so knowledgeable and you're the expert on how to educate children. I mean, not that the field of education is something that we really understand very well anyway, like how to teach good. But I mean, doing it this way is certainly not the way to do it.
Yeah. And you bring up an excellent point there, Alexander, which is that we've only really been studying how to like best maximize like education for like the past maybe, and this is extremely generous, like 100 years.
And in America, we ignore all the best practices. We know that starting school so early is bad for kids. We know that doing like a ton of homework is bad for kids and it doesn't increase educational realities. So like everything we know about how to do this correctly, we also refuse to do.
Yes. And also a lot of our public education system is based on ideas around IQ that are ridiculously outdated. Like laughably so. If you get into like the history of teaching, and this is a huge tangent, but a lot of our current educational system is built on essentially standardized testing around like the idea of IQ. We don't use IQ tests exactly, but that's kind of what we aim for. And IQ tests were very specifically developed for like French fourth graders, like 100+ years ago. Like it is not supposed to be something we are basing an entire education system around at all. But
right, absolutely. And you know, when we talk about education, talk about these things, like we have to just call it how it is. Republicans are anti-education and they don't care about kids actually learning the abilities to actually critically think and succeed in this world. Let's just call it out, right? Because that's exactly what it is. Because Democrats historically have supported teachers unions and supported higher education budgets. Democrats have historically fought for retirements and pensions for teachers. Democrats have historically been the arbiters of making sure that public education be the great equalizer when it comes to the ability for people in our society to be able to thrive as humans. And when we see Republicans pass bills that are specifically targeted at suing school districts to take the little money that they already have, and then you see the ability of criminalizing teachers for having nothing more than a pride flag on their wall, you see the automatic, not only the stripping financially of the school's abilities to teach children, but you're also attacking the hearts of the people who want to teach the children correctly. Like, it is so sinister on so many levels that if you are voting for a Republican, you are voting against education and the people who deserve the equality to be able to get a proper chance in life, to get a leg up, to be able to have the opportunities that everybody should have afforded to them as a basic human right. And that's why the Republicans are anti-human rights.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it is. We need to come together, folks. Like, this is why we are here to ask you to use !map in chat and head over to transalsquad.com so that you can sign up and fight on the ground. We need people to actually show up. We need, if you've had that itch in your heart to get involved, this is how you can do it. We are throwing you the lifeline. This is how we actually are able to fight. And go there. You can sign up for text banking, phone banking, or even in-person canvassing, which is statistically the most effective way of getting people out to vote, having that face-to-face connection. But all of them help a lot. And so get out there, get your information in, and also do yourself a favor and join Progressive Victory's 2022 Discord, okay? In my chat, that's !victory. The Discord is full of smart, well experienced people who have been running political campaigns for decades. We have people who are there to help you and get you comfortable with the idea of volunteering for political campaigns, because this is how we have our voices heard. This is how we get politicians elected, and that's what we need to do if we're going to stem the tide of, Brian Kemp's in this world, who are who are helping and signing into law things that prohibit, like, teaching about racism, teaching about gender, teaching about sexuality, or trying to pass legislation. I'm referencing here SB 393, essentially a bill passed in Georgia to prohibit social media platforms from censoring user viewpoints. Yes, you heard me right, folks. Georgia is literally trying to make it illegal to ban conservatives for saying their horrible, bigoted garbage on their platforms. So, look, get involved, because we need this win, or literally we live in the worst timeline.
It seems like they're nationalizing Twitter.
Yeah,
let's nationalize it. We want complete control, government takeover.
Exactly. It is off. It is, and this is something that is recurred throughout history. Fascism is often laughably silly and ineffective, and like we can laugh at it, but also like they had parody columns about the rise of Hitler in Germany, but like we need to actually get out and stop this fascist movement before it gets too bad, because if we just sit back and laugh at it, that doesn't make it go away. It's ineffective, but it will kill us. So we need to get out there and do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. And the best way you can do that, transalsquad.com, transalsquad.com, transalsquad.com.
And that's transel like cancel, by the way, everybody. Like it's not transcell like incel or something.
No,
Someone asked me that earlier. I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
No, you don't understand. Like I super off topic about that. And I think that people have a complete misunderstanding of how much sex, if you choose to have it, trans people have access to sometimes. Like
true.
all the trans people I know, most of them at least a lot of them are all very sexually active and living thriving sexual lives. So I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
But also, the transeling has begun. Okay?
Ooh.
We're transeling Doug Mastriano. We're transeling Brian Kemp. Okay? Join us. Help us transel the villainous conservatives across this country.
Yeah, let's do it. We really do have the opportunity. Like this is that opportunity where they're stumbling.
Yep.
They're hurt. Like, and this is our opportunity to finally pull the last bit of the rug from under their feet, because they're going down. They are. Like, when you look at the way the Republican consultants nationally are talking about these races, it's like somebody punched them in the gut, and it's sweet.
Yeah.
And and when they're out of breath and they're trying to catch more, no, you hit them again. We got to knock them down and make sure they're out, and that's what we can do. And this is important for our own morale.
Yep.
As activists and organizers. Let's push this across the line, because when we work together and have that victory together, like that's what's going to make it so much sweeter. And then when we do this again, we're going to be even more talented and more skilled. And then when we do this again, I expect a lot of you to probably be campaign managers, running fields, doing actual running phone banks. Like, these are things that are possible. And, some of the great, like I said before, some of the greatest moments in politics is sitting there watching the ballots roll in and seeing that the hard work that you put in succeeded. It is those feelings make it so worth it. The feeling of doing that victory after you knocked 1,000 doors, or after you called 10,000 phone calls, right? Like, I know I'm throwing big numbers out there, but it could be any number that you have a goal for. And then you see that those ballots roll in and you only won by like 500 votes, and you think, oh my gosh, I actually contributed to a victory in a large scale. And that's all we want. We want to be able to assist you in those big wins, so we can all win these victories together, so we can build the bench and when I say build the bench, what that means is that, like, you have the players on the field and you have people waiting to sub in whenever people need to go in, right? And that's what we're doing. And as people that are gaining skills and talents in organizing, you're going to be able to then make a better decision in your own life to see which candidates are better electable and all of those type of things. So I could talk on and on and on about the power of organizing and how important it is and how fun and community building it is. But seriously, give it a try. Yeah. There's going to be no harm in giving it a try.
Well, and on top of that, the hope is that after we hit the 2022 midterms, we can keep building up this community, keep building up this movement, because one of the things I've talked about a lot on my own individual streams has been about how dangerous and how pivotal the 2024 elections are going to be. How it is essentially the turning point. Does America fall to fascism, or do we kind of avert that disaster? And this is kind of our training ground. This is where we're going out, we're doing our training montage to turn the tide of the 2022 midterms, and then we're all going to be marching into 2024 like the buff Doge meme, okay? You're going to be hitting the streets, thick arms bulging, knocking on doors, changing hearts, changing minds. And that's the dream, because that is what we will need to be doing, what we will need to be able to do to make a difference and get out there and, actually do the hard shit that is politics. Politics is, this is what it is, guys. It is getting out there. It is talking about our ideas. It is convincing people and that getting them to go vote. And I don't know, that's really cool and also really daunting, and we need your help.
Yeah, and I just want to bring it to historical context really quickly. So if you look at because I right, as somebody who is a political strategist, right, somebody that has to go and look at the past and see if we can get any clues from the past. Well, one of the scary clues from the past is normally, and I think you've probably heard this before mentioned in some way, when the president in power usually loses the midterms, loses the House and the Senate. It's been this way since 2000. You have 2016. You also have 2000 and not 16. Sorry, that's the wrong year. 2010, and then you have 2014. Both those years were devastating. Also in the 90s, when you had the flip-flops. Now, when we're talking about the Senate and the Republicans being on their back feet, historically, it's not supposed to be that way. So if we actually turn the tide of history and say, actually, it's no longer that way in America, actually the policies that you stand for actually make a difference on if you get elected or not, we could fundamentally rattle and shake the foundation of the way political punditry looks at politics. Right. And I know I'm talking this big, giant philosophical, national thing, but this is why we're here, because we know how important it is to not only win these victories, but also win as many around them as possible. Because if we actually break historical precedent, then the Republicans may have to, or the Trump Republicans, which is the Republicans, will have to think about new strategies, like reversing their opinion on abortion, reversing their opinion on queer rights. Like, they could go that dramatic. Will they? Probably not, because I feel like they're pretty far gone. So hopefully there'll be the elimination of them, because we will have another indictment against Trump. We are going to be able to fight against Trump. And that is going to charge up our base in 2024. So if we win and defy expectations in 2022, the Doge meme is absolutely adequate for this analogy, because there's no way to stop it at that point. It becomes that avalanche, like the snowflake analogy is before, because we have turned the tides and we'll have the energy when we weren't supposed to have it historically. And that excites me. I like making history. I like shattering the backs of the Republican Party. Like that is what gets me up in the morning. That's what makes me fight so hard, knowing that they are going to fill my cups with their Republican tears after this one. I'm just going to say it, I've been predicting this for like 2 years. I know this is going to happen, and this is going to be great, but it's going to be because of you. And that's plain and simple. It's impossible to just speak it into existence. We have to work for it.
Yep. It's time to, now's the time to roll up your sleeves and start sweating. It's time to get to work, folks. And you can do that by going to transelsquad.com. Transelsquad.com. Transelsquad.com.
Transelsquad.com. Join the translation.
Yeah. So now we are turning our attention over to Arizona. And speaking of kind of this breaking the back of the Republican Party, I think that when we're talking about that, Josie, we're really seeing, I think, a lot of this fascist energy coming to a head in a lot of local and state races across the country. Specifically, there's a team of Arizona Republicans called the LD4 Strong Team, and they are three women who are seeking to represent Phoenix, Scottsdale, and Paradise Valley in the state's legislature, and are essentially they were essentially brought together and bonded by sisterhood and virulent anti-LGBTQ bigotry. And to quote one of them, "We're so aligned in our philosophy. It was a no-brainer to run together." And, you know, they talk about trans people being child predators. They talk about, kids knowing that gay people exist, being an attempt to groom them. They talk about how the Don't Say Gay bill is something that they need to implement in their state. They talk about how essentially they need, like, that by educating children, and by trying to get schools to educate children on LGBTQ issues, that this is a form of indoctrination by the left, that evil, vile leftists have infiltrated education unions, and the leftist activists are controlling the schools. And just to point this out, folks, the whole leftist activists are controlling the schools is only a hair's breadth away from being like the Jews are controlling the schools. You know, like it is recycled anti-Semitism, and it is alive and well in the Republican Party. Okay. They talk about how Gen Z is identifying as 20% queer, and so that means pretty soon all of America will be gay and trans, and
women will be 8 feet tall based on the trajectory of increased heights.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, it is just. I don't know about you guys, but every time I look into what's going on in Arizona, I'm just like, my breath gets taken away at like, these people are just allowed to like go out in public and say the craziest things imaginable. You know, like one of the RNC speakers this past year, Marianne Mendoza, was headlining on the second day and was canceled at the last minute. Because she told everyone on Twitter to go look up the Rothschild plot, which is a very old 1700s anti-Semitic conspiracy theory about the Rothschilds like controlling the world banks. These people like do not like Jewish folks. They don't like trans folks. They don't like gay folks. They don't like brown folks. They don't like Hispanic folks. They don't like black folks. They only like the good whites. And, well, the good whites are only the most bigoted whites. Let's be clear about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. But I will say, though, if you look at the Kemp race, right, who's running against Kelly, correct? I just want to make sure I've got the right person in my mind. Mark Kelly versus Brian Kemp, I believe that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. But what you'll see is that Brian Kemp have scrubbed.
Isn't Brian Kemp's the Georgia governor?
Yeah, we're calling back to Georgia real quick.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, I didn't mean that then. Against Mark, who's that?
Mark Kelly.
Kari
Masters?
Masters. So Blake Masters, who's running for Senate against Mark Kelly in Arizona, which is still a close race. It's not like Like, even though money's being taken away, the Republicans really do want this race really, really bad, because if they lose this race, that's just another race they could have won, and that's going to hurt them in the future because Senate seats are 6 terms. So this is an opportunity to try to unseat Kelly, who is the senator in Arizona. Now, he was one of the most full-throated supporters of abolishing Roe v. Wade, pro-life, like the whole bit of like where the most extreme positions of pro-lifers could be, or let's say pro-birthers, actually forced birthers. That's the right way to say it. As a forced birther, he had all of his talking points. But if you go to his website now, he's taken all of that language off of his website, because he understands that that this is becoming a referendum on abortion rights, and has actually put out an ad recently stating that Kelly is lying about his abortion stances in the past, to try to say, oh, I only meant third trimester, late term, and partial birth abortions, which nobody elects to get because of procrastination, by the way. Those are very tragic, sad situations in most cases, and are only 1% of all pregnancies that have to go to abortion.
Yeah, that's parents who've painted the nursery.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly, right? So the fact that now Blake Masters is trying to backpedal away from one of the most signature stances that he had on his campaign is really showing the rattling that is happening of the core values of the Republicans, because we all really know that only 30% of the Republicans believe in this most extreme way. Most people in America believe that people should have access to reproductive care. It's pretty clear across the country. And what we're starting to see is that these races in 2022 are becoming a referendum on abortion access and reproductive care for people. And so this is a good sign. And that's why we got to keep on pushing back, because we are winning when it comes to these really core issues where protecting democracy, abortion, and LGBTQ rights are becoming kitchen table issues, which I thought I would never say in my lifetime, that these would be the issues that everybody around the kitchen table are talking about and the reason people are going out to vote. So we need to keep that momentum and keep going. But I just wanted to kind of highlight about the wildness and having to see the most extreme Republicans starting to take back some of their words, because they know that is actually not getting them votes in the ballot box.
Yeah. It is it is worth noting that Blake Masters is probably, like, I know that we talked about Doug Mastriano being like the most villainous person in our current political space, but Blake Masters, I would argue, is the slimiest one. He has accepted $15 million from Peter Thiel, the tech billionaire who decided it was a good idea to name his totally not a spying agency collecting all of your data company Palantir, cheekily after the devices from Lord of the Rings. But
I forgot about that. That's so cringe.
Yeah, right? But Peter Thiel is also a gay man who has backed Blake Masters, specifically throwing all other gay people under the bus, because Blake Masters has repeatedly said that essentially his goal is to repeal gay marriage, that he thinks LGBTQ inclusion is disgusting sex stuff, that trans women are men in women's bathrooms. He is like just this scummy dude who's more than happy to take money from a gay man when it serves his purpose, And Masters is like to Josie pointed out, he's also more than willing to scrub all of his positions at the drop of a hat to try and cater to where he believes the Republican majority is in order to gain some form of an edge. And while Arizona might be one of the oddest political places in America right now. This race is also one where you can actually make a difference. Masters and Mark Kelly aren't that far apart when it comes to the polls. This is another place where a small, dedicated team of canvassing folks on texting and phone banks and going door to door can actually make a difference and prevent him from gaining power, and more importantly, empower Democrats on a national level. These are, by the way, a lot of these races are races that would materially impact things that our Congress can do, right? Like, even if it's just preserving the numbers we have right now, that would be a huge benefit over having Republicans able to block any piece of legislation. Okay? Even if if we can get like a few extra members in the Senate or in the House, and again, that's a long shot, but if we could do that, like, it would allow us to bypass the mansions and the cinemas to actually get more meaningful legislation passed to help people all across the United States, to preserve trans and gay rights, to enshrine gay marriage into law. You know, like, there are so many different things that would make a tangible difference. This is not an election to like sit out and look at these races and be like, my vote doesn't make a difference. Because one individual vote might not make a difference. But when you're going out there and getting 10 people to vote, 25 people to vote, 50 people, when you're working with other people to get hundreds of other people to vote, that can actually make a difference. That can turn the tide in some of these elections. We've been seeing, like Josie pointed out earlier, elections where like 500 votes made the difference, you know?
I want to point out that this is not about you convincing people necessarily, by the way. Like, when we say we want you to canvass, when we say we want you to call people, what we're saying is like, oh, you're probably somebody who has a job, right? Like, I'm speaking to the audience. Like, you probably have a job, and you might feel yourself like, oh, how am I going to get time off on the day that I'm supposed to vote? Now, once you get involved with the campaign, then you get the paperwork for a mail-in ballot, or you get the information about how to vote early. And then you're speaking to someone else who's working class like you, and they're saying, how am I going to get out of work? I can't participate or I'll lose my job. And you can say, well, let me teach you about how to vote by mail or vote early. You know, like, we're not saying like we want you to go out there and knock on people's doors and have fucking arguments all day. You know, like, this is just about getting information to people. Like, maybe the people who you're talking to don't even know that the local person running for office is like non-binary and like you want them to get more support and votes and everything. Like, a lot of people just don't know this shit. Like, how do I know any of this shit? But the Progressive Victory got in touch with us. Like, I wouldn't know how to get involved with any of this stuff either. So hopefully, like, my being ignorant and seeing like how we can actually materially change things like helps you all also see that there are ways in which you can be involved that aren't strictly voting, that don't involve debating. Like, we're not asking you to get in arguments at Thanksgiving table, you know, like, that's not what this is about. It's about community building and progressive, positive action.
Yeah, this is not, the goal of this is not to debate bro people into voting Democrat, okay? The vast majority of people out in America do not vote. And our goal by going door to door is to either give them the information they need to make it easier for them to vote, or to, get them to believe in something, get them to feel that little spark of hope where they're like, oh, this might actually better my life in some way. This might I have a son who's trans, you know, I would like him to be able to get the healthcare he needs, or like, oh yeah, one of my friends is gay. I would like him to be able to get married someday. Like, you know, these are things that get people to vote, and that's the goal. Is not to like convert a Trumper into a dark Brandoner. Okay, the goal is to get them the information they need to go to the polls. And the other part is we have amazing, talented people who have been working on political campaigns for literally decades. And they are there to help you and to teach you all of the the tips and tricks of the trade, you know, to be able to go out there, low stress, you know, be safe, and even have some fun and make some friends along the way.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that was a really great point, Jack, because a lot of people like that's why the experience is important, right? Because when you think about, I'm going to go into a little bit of election theory, okay? So everybody stay with me here. But as far as like political organizing theory, most of the time, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your own personal life, where you'll see the only time a political thing happens to you is either an ad when you're online, maybe scrolling through whatever social media, YouTube. If you watch cable TV, you'll probably see it. If you're at your grandparents' house where they have the TV on all the time, you'll probably see the TV and you'll see those ads. But not very often you probably get an actual person that actually gives you a call or actually, you know, knocks on your door and actually has a conversation with you. Now, this is part of the reason so this isn't a bug, this is a feature, right?
Mm-hmm.
The consultants in the consultant class, right? And I can say that because I was a part of that consulting class for a short period of time. They want to make sure that candidates have the narrow thought that they need to get ads on TV, they need to put mail in mailboxes, and they don't need to make sure they spend resources on volunteer management and door canvassing operations and phone banking, because the consultants just want to just make pretty graphics on the computer screen, shoot a video, get a ton of money on that, and then go and for the TV ad, get a discount and pocket the discount, charge the campaign, and then usually it's the Republican Party or the Democratic Party that pays half of that, and the candidate pays the other half. So that's why the candidate gets a discount when they're endorsed by the political parties, because the political parties can then pay for half of the ad costs that are usually millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars. However, when we talk about like the basics of like what I call retail politics, that's belly to belly. That's like knocking on doors, talking to humans. Majority of the time, and this is the science behind it. When you knock on somebody's door, there's a 20% chance that door is going to open. If that door opens, it's a 67% chance that everybody in that household is going to vote for that candidate that knocked, or for that candidate or the campaign of that candidate that knocked on the door, because that's usually the only person that ever knocks on the door and like, oh, that was a really humanizing moment. And they're like, you know what, this person actually had a conversation with me and I actually got to talk to them. So 65%, 67% of the time, that will happen. So in theory, if you knock on every door, 20% chance to talk to about everybody, 20% chance of talking to 20% of the people, 20% of the people, not 20%, 20% of the people open the door, have a conversation with you. Now, if you multiply that effort, you will outweigh the power of a TV ad and a mailer. Because when you're going through the mail, what happens? You usually throw away the political stuff because they're just junk mail, just like everybody does. So usually what happens is you have to see a name 27 times if you're just an average voter to be able to think that you're going to vote for that person. That's why this type of political organizing is so powerful, because your call or your door knock is more powerful than probably $1,000 in ad buy. That's the truth. And
Yep.
that's why a lot of these campaigns are terrified of organizations like this that actually point people in directions and actually train people to knock on the right doors. Like Jack was saying, you're not going to talk to a Republican. You're going to talk to somebody who's probably on the fence, or somebody who said they already are going to vote, and you're just making sure that they have a voting plan and that they have the necessary support networks to make sure that they vote. Those are the conversations that you're probably going to be having, which are pleasant, fun, amazing, energizing. It's like, oh, I didn't know the election was next week. Huh. Wow, you just got that vote really easy, but it took that call to make that happen. And that's why it's important to have this really highly trained, experienced crew of people that are able to cut these lists and say, hey, all these people are ready to hear from you. right? They want to hear from you. That's what's special about it. And it's important to jump on these type of opportunities because there isn't a lot of opportunities where you actually have structure to use your time effectively. So it's that's why we're going to win this. That's why we're doing this, because no matter what happens, you can't beat a good ground game. You just can't.
Well, and frankly, we need that good ground game, especially in Arizona. Like, it is scary there. Like, while the Blake Masters race against or the race against Blake Masters by Mark Kelly is a winnable race, we also need to reiterate that a lot of people just vote down ballot on party stuff. And the more votes we can get for Mark Kelly, the more votes we can get down ballot as well, which makes a great, huge difference in the entire state. Because one of the issues facing the people in Arizona is the fact that you have some real cuckoo bananas, folks. There is one of the major backers of Kari Lake, who just won the primary for, I believe, the governorship in Arizona, calling for queer people to be put into concentration camps due to the monkeypox outbreak. You have some of the most sus folks, like the Arizona Republican Secretary of State nominee kept, and I'm going to quote here, a treason watch list in order to keep track of political adversaries. You know, like, it's scary out there what is going on in Arizona, and we need people at every level of government to fight back against this. One of the other big things is that the GOP in Arizona is trying to pass a bill that would force teachers and educators to out queer students to their parents. This has been something that has been avoided historically for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is that, well, outing a gay student to their parents could very well put that student at risk for serious physical and emotional abuse. Like, it could put their life in jeopardy. There are parents who have murdered their kids for being gay. And chances are, if a kid hasn't come out to their parents, there's a pretty good reason for them not to. They are choosing not to come out to a parent for a specific reason.
Absolutely. And on that particular bill that you're talking about, it also allows for the state to just fire LGBTQ teachers, which, already sounds awful on its face, but it also has a very strong legal implication against the teachers' unions, right? The national AFT unions, where you can't just fire a teacher, right? Like, there's protections for teachers to be protected. So so you think about, like, libs of TikTok, right? And thank goodness that they're finally gone off Twitter. But there are going to be people who are doing hit squads trying to dox teachers to figure out if they're gay or not, and have people go and publicly ask them, "Are you gay?" to make them discuss gayness in schools. Like that sounds a little kid's girl, but that's what's going to happen, right? We've already seen it with libs of TikTok and organizations like that are literally putting a bullseye on the backs of teachers so they can't even educate, which brings us back full circle to the conversation we were just having about teachers. This is yet another attack on teachers' fundamental rights of being able to be teachers and having the protection of a union, of not being fired for their own immutable characteristic of being gay. Like, people talk about the fact that gay, like, marriage equality is still like something that, it's still going to be there. They're already going after teachers in Arizona to just fire them for discussing being gay. Well, it's kind of hard to not discuss it if you have a picture of your partner on your desk. Right. And it's something that is so fundamental that teachers are going to be forced in the closet in professional work life.
Well,
And that's also going to scare the students.
yeah, it is a blatant attempt to control information, to isolate children so that they can be indoctrinated without a full understanding of the world. And this bill, by the way, House Bill 2161 is what I'm talking about in Arizona. On top of what it is on the face of it trying to legislate, it also applies to if a kid comes out as trans, or if a teacher suspects that their student is gay or trans, and it allows the bill allows parents to sue school districts if teachers do not out their kids, meaning that like the school district is being held essentially at gunpoint to out kids. And it's just disgusting. And if you might be wondering, how did this really disgusting thing come to be in the Republican state legislature for Arizona? Well, it turns out that the people who have sponsored the bill, specifically Representative Steve Kaiser, who is a Republican representing Phoenix, worked with LGBTQ hate groups. And I'm not just saying that they are LGBTQ hate groups. The Southern Poverty Law Center has officially labeled the groups that he worked with as hate groups. They are known as being virulently bigoted against gay and trans people. They believe that books are sexually explicit if they just depict a gay person existing in them. They believe that you are grooming children to be molested if you are trans in front of a kid. Like, that is their ideology. And fundamentally, the goal of these local, state, and national discussions around trans people and gay people is to other us, and it is to make us easier and easier targets for more and more violent calls to action. Because, well, they can't offer anything else. They can't offer anything to their constituents. They can't offer healthcare. They can't offer you any kind of like employment security. They can't offer you increased benefits for retirement. They can't offer you any good thing. But what they can offer you is fear. And that is what they're trying to sell you when it comes to trans people in the United States. And the only way for us to counter fear is with hope and to inspire people to take action. And I'm hoping that that's what we're able to do for all of you tonight. Because we do need to take a stand. They can only get as far as we let them get. So let's draw a line.
I got to jump in just real quick because it's discussion happening in my chat right now. I understand you all are disillusioned about voting.
Yep.
Right? Everybody out there is like, why should I give all this effort? Like, wouldn't it be better to do some nebulous form of direct action that no one really seems to specify what the fuck that means? Like, why would the Republicans be gerrymandering shit so hard? Why would they be trying to make it to where you need an official state ID that costs $25 and a lot of people can't afford that shit? Like, why are they trying so hard to keep you from voting if it's so ineffective, right? Clearly, they're scared of you mobilizing, which is what we're trying to do. We are trying to mobilize you because they're terrified that their Christo-fascist minority is going to lose power. It's this tiny minority just grasping at straws at this point. And so many of you maybe have never voted before. Like, show of hands. Like, how, obviously, like, not everybody in our audiences are going to be American, but like some people only vote once because of one like single issue thing, right? Some people never get around to it because they have a job. Motivating you to get involved in that way does make a difference. Why would they be trying so hard to prevent it from happening if it didn't make a huge difference? Let's show them. Let's show them the difference it can make.
And not only, no, we aren't, by the way, saying just vote harder. What we're saying is get out and get other people to vote too. Because again, it's true. Your individual vote in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter. But 10, 20, 100 votes, that does matter. That's the stuff democracy is made out of. So we
Yeah.
need to get out and get other people to vote, because if we can't mobilize people to go out and vote, how the fuck are we going to mobilize people to do anything else? How the fuck are we going to mobilize people to get out and do any of that other nebulous direct action? Okay? This is the lowest bar. Okay? Let's get people to vote, and then we can talk about doing other cooler shit.
Yeah. And I will never forget, it was back in, I think, 2014. I was asked to be a Democratic observer for a hand recount of a small city council district in a town outside of San Diego called Chula Vista. The Democrat lost by one vote, no lie, one vote in an actual fairly sized city election for a city council seat. I was blown away. And like when I was watching the votes, we were like trying to make sure there wasn't like a mistake or somebody miscounted something. It was like by hand. I had to watch this entire process for several hours. One vote. Okay. Like that, I have to say that because those votes really do and can and will matter in the grand scheme of things, because we are fighting. And I know it was already said that Republicans have been working on gerrymandering and also voter suppression. In Florida, they are now seeking conviction of 5 people who voted illegally because there was a weird law caveat to the felony law that allowed voters in Florida to do felonies. There are some people who are looking at a 5-year prison sentence because they didn't even know they weren't able to vote. The state of Florida still registered them to vote anyway. This isn't a situation where now, if you vote by accident, by some happenstance, because they made a mistake in the voter registration process, that you could be looking at 5 years in prison. That doesn't sound to me that the Republicans think your vote doesn't matter. That they're literally trying to put people in prison for doing nothing more than exercising their vote.
And by having it be that, like, if you've committed certain crimes, you're not allowed to vote unless you petition and ask for permission to vote again, which is how it works in Florida. Like, look at what they're criminalizing. Who are they criminalizing? What rights do criminals have? Like, if you don't have the right to vote once you commit a crime, then the people in power can just arbitrarily decide that something about who you are intrinsically is a crime. Like, they are literally trying to come after drag in a broad sense in Florida right now in a way that could very much easily lead to the idea that cross-dressing, quote unquote, cross-dressing around children generally could be considered pedophilic behavior and put you on a sex offender list. Like, pay attention to who they're trying to deprive of votes. Why are there so many black people in prisons? Because black people vote overwhelmingly Democrat. Like, voter suppression is real.
And look at this as well. And incarcerated individuals can't vote. There is no surprise that most of those prisons are in Republican-led districts, because they know that if the prison populations actually voted in those districts, that it would actually swing the elections.
Yeah, it counts towards their population count for how many representatives they get, but they can't vote.
Absolutely.
And guys, just to reiterate, like, I know that it might not seem like much right now, but if we can like roll into 2022 midterms with an effective movement under our belts, rolling into 2024, we have the possibility to actually make a difference, not just in local, state elections or even national elections. We're talking presidential elections, okay? Like, when you look at the last presidential election cycle, okay, Joe Biden won Arizona by like 10K votes.
Right.
Like, he won Georgia by 12K votes. He won Nevada by like 33K votes. Like, Wisconsin by 20K. Like, we are talking about such thin margins that our dedicated efforts could easily make the difference on national, presidential, historical levels. And that's not me blowing smoke up your ass. That is legitimately a difference that we all can work together to make in our country. And that could mean the difference between like you having civil rights or not. It could mean the difference between me having civil rights or not. this shit does matter. It's not, we can't kick our feet back. We can't kick our feet up and like take a smoke break, because unfortunately, as trans people, we do not have that luxury.
Right. And let's look at it, right? Like, a lot of you may be disillusioned because you've been voting for maybe a couple cycles, right? And you're like, oh, I voted, I didn't do it. Okay. So when the Republicans lost Roe v. Wade, they knew it was probably going to take anywhere between 30 to 50 years to get that overturned. But they knew that as long as they kept on voting and kept on voting and kept on voting, that they would eventually start stacking the court, and they would start stacking people who would start appointing terrible people to those courts. And then eventually they were able to win. We should not be disillusioned, because disillusionment is what they're counting on. It doesn't matter. The Republicans are always going to vote. It doesn't matter how disillusioned they are. They don't care if Obama just won. They're still going to vote, because they know that their vote is the way that they effectively affect change. So we need to fight at their own game. There's a reason why school board meetings are full of Republicans, because they've gotten so good at mobilizing organizers to go and party that they now have extra inner organizing energy to go and politicians in their boardrooms. Like, this is what is happening, right? And so we have to suck it up and say, look, like, we may have lost this one, but we're going to keep fighting on. That's the only way it's going to work.
And you know what? The best way to fight is by typing !map into chat, which will allow you to get a link to transalsquad.com, transalsquad.com, which will provide you a link to the transalsquad.com website, where there is an interactive map showing you the races we are focusing on the most in the upcoming election cycle, the upcoming midterms. And every blue pin on that dot represents somebody who is signed up to try and make a difference in their local, state, and national elections. And underneath that, you'll find a form that you can fill out. And that form can sign you up for text banking, phone banking, or house-to-house canvassing, all of which will make a colossal difference. I promise. I promise it will make a difference. And on top of that, you should absolutely head over and join the Progressive Victory 2022 Discord. And you can access that in my chat with victory, ! Victory, I should say. Where you can get up-to-date information on local, state, and national races. And on top of that, you can access and have your questions answered about anything basically about canvassing or running a campaign or being a part of a campaign. We have people with decades of experience working on this, and they have put all of their expertise at your disposal. And frankly, I'm very thankful for them for helping us out. They've been wonderful partners setting this all up together and helping us do what I hope is going to be a really amazing thing. So please,
absolutely
check those out.
I agree. And I just wanted to say this really quickly about this team, and I know I throw my experience around a lot, but I've worked for it, damn it. So I'm going to do it. Having the conversations and the meetings on the back end of this with like actually talking about the resources and how things are, I've been, and Lux Alexander and Jack know, I'm usually the person asking the questions of, have you considered this? Have you done this? Are you doing these things? Because those are the things. But what I can confidently say is that this team knows their stuff and that you're in good hands. I do not just send people to people that may not know what they're doing, because I don't want you to feel disillusioned. Because most likely the reason that you're disillusioned is because you probably worked for a candidate that sold you a pile of goods that didn't even get 10 votes, right? And I am joking about 10 votes, but I'm just saying there's a lot of candidates out there that blow a lot of smoke on their ability when they actually don't know how to run campaigns, and that can suck. I know. I've worked for candidates that just did a terrible job, and you're just like, gosh, I just wasted my time on that person that didn't even put in the work to win. So that's why I confidently endorse and support transalsquad.com and the people who make this possible, because of the fact that you're in good hands and that they know what they're doing, and you're going to get a list that's effective and actually know what it's like to actually win on a winning campaign. And that's what we're here for. We're not here to disillusion you. We're here to help you build community so we know what it feels like to have some victories. Because I guarantee you, if we work, we will get these victories, and we'll have a lot to celebrate in November.
Yeah. And I mean, even if we're not getting the big ticket items that we really want and need, we can do things like prevent, for example, HB 2319 from passing in Arizona, which essentially makes it illegal in most circumstances to film the police. There are things being passed on state and local levels that are horrendous, that if we sit back and just ignore the political sphere that we're in, will meaningfully make our lives much worse. And we can't take that sitting down. We can't just sit by and allow bills that criminalize doctors providing medical care to trans kids to pass. Right. We can't do that. Just existentially, morally, it is not something that we can sit out on. You might not think that it matters, but I think there's on some level a moral obligation to, even if you think your vote doesn't matter, to show up, cast that vote, and try and get other people to cast their votes as well. That is, we are at a precipice where we need to stop the worst things from happening. And, and I hope you all join us.
Go ahead.
Oh, if you're anarchist pilled, just meeting the people is still important. Maybe you don't win the vote, maybe you don't succeed at that, but how are you going to do any direct action if you don't fucking know anybody?
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly right. And I want to just hard point about defeating those bills. So I followed the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida very closely through its committee process. The Don't Say Gay bill passed the Judicial Committee in Florida to a 7-14 vote. That isn't that much of a margin to overcome. Mm-hmm. Now, you may think that's 7 state representatives, but really, at the end of the day, you just have to flip 5 of those seats, and now you have a competitive Judiciary Committee in that particular way, right? That is the way it really looks, and that's why it's a representative democracy, and that is why these local races matter, because what Jack said, that's the only way we're going to defeat these niche bills that are sneaking into these state houses, is because we need to pay attention to the people who are actually going to vote for and against those things, because sometimes those things pass by 1 or 2 representative votes, right? And that's what I need. These votes do matter, because that one vote that you didn't vote can flip that one committee to then allow something like the Don't Say Gay bill to pass in your state. And when we're talking about a few votes, think about that vote. Excuse me. Excuse me. I don't know what's wrong with my voice. So think about that vote I was talking about in San Diego, where that council member flipped by 1 vote, right? Let's say that council member was the swing vote in a specific bill that was going to maybe support a transportation bill, maybe make sure that we have a climate change bill, make sure that we actually don't, support, immigration detention because it was in San Diego. Those are the things that could fundamentally change a person's way of life, and that person only won by 1 vote, and then that 1 vote then swings an entire city. That's how much those votes matter, and that's why we're doing this work.
Yeah. And guys, again, just to kind of bring it all back to the signups, it's super easy. You need an email, you need a first name, last name, zip code, and then you can choose to put in a phone number, Discord handle, whatever. And then you click a little box, says phone bank, text bank, or Canvas. You can add any notes, concerns, hopes, dreams, aspirations. Then you confirm that you're not a robot, and then you just click the little button. And the form should also bring you to the Discord for Progressive Victory and get you linked up in there. It's super, super easy, and we don't have to jump right to saving the world. We can just step by step. It starts with a little form, and clicking that link to go to translesquad.com. Okay. We need to we need to start a real transl culture in America, okay? It's time. It's time for the transling to begin.
It is time for the transling to begin, and we're really, I don't know, I think we've kind of, I don't know if we're wrapping up or not for this particular segment, but I will say that I am very happy with this team, and there's going to be more streamers coming in. We're going to have a lot more in-depth conversations about particular elections, because I think it's important to be able to see in real time the work that we're doing and what our work can actually push, prevent, and actually support. This is actually something that I think after this is all said and done and we are able to see those results roll in November, I think we can sleep well that next day, because we know we work really hard to make sure that we are moving this country in the right direction. And if you're familiar with my streams, you've probably heard me say this before. However, I do believe that trans rights, queer rights are really the spear tip to human rights, right? Because we're talking a lot about anti-trans legislation, anti-queer legislation today. We even talked about anti-abortion and things of that nature. But we were talking about how they're using trans rights and queer rights to defund schools. Mm-hmm. We were talking about how they're using these laws to try to push teachers out of the state. We're talking about actual real things that are happening because they are going after our rights. They're using queer rights as a bloody token in exchange for the defunding of schools, to support their ideologies and to ensure that bigotry and inequality continues to flourish in their area. And we're not going to let that happen, because when all people are free, we will all be able to get all of the benefits of that free society. But if we do not free everyone and we try to leave people in the back, they are going to use the stripping of those people to fundamentally strip the rights of people who aren't even part of that marginalized community. So if you support queer rights and trans rights, you support all rights, because it doesn't allow a backdoor for hatred to take away the fundamental rights that we all love and enjoy. And that's why we do this. And that's why we're the Transl Squad, because it's enough. We've had enough of us being used as a political token, a chip, a wedge, a political just enemy to be able to be exploited and for their own political gain. And we're not going to have it anymore. And that's why we're going to that's why we're going to work so hard to defeat Mastriano, to defeat people like Masters, to defeat and put in people like Stacey Abrams. Like, those are the things that we are going to be able to do with your support, because we cannot let the denying of human rights serve a fascist, evil party.
Yeah.
So join translesquad.com.
Translesquad.com.
Seriously.
Yeah. No, it's time. It's time to stop being bludgeoned by this and to take up our own cause. It's time for us to take up the sword and give back as good as we've gotten, okay? If not better. I aim for better. And this is the way you can do it. Pick up the weapon they've used to beat us down and use it to fight for justice, to fight for rights, to fight for schools and knowledge, acceptance and love. And I can think of nothing more suiting for the 2022 midterms than to turn it all around with a message of radical, fascist defeating love. And I hope you'll join us at transosquad.com.
That's awesome. Hey, so to end on a light note, Jack and I were at a wedding for our friend of the stream for sure, Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a question that was asked, and I think this will be a fun, maybe teaser, fun thing to end on. I don't know if you were there for the conversation, but there was a question that's kind of controversial, where the definition of a guillotine being a weapon. So, in front of all of us here, is the guillotine a weapon?
My inclination is to say yes. Although, as always with these things, the answer is, well, what do you define as a weapon? Like what's the difference between a weapon and a tool, for example? That's an
tool
important
for
distinction to
execution,
make.
right?
Exactly. Like, is it a weapon or is it a tool for justice? Like, is the hangman's noose a weapon?
I don't know. It could be a weapon if it's wielded that way, I guess. Go ahead, Jack.
I mean, I think it boils down to is state execution a weapon? Is the power of the state a weapon? I would argue yes, and to that end, that would be a weapon wielded by the powers of the state.
Yeah, because like usually you think a weapon is like it must be wielded by a person, but I guess it can also be wielded by an entity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody says, "Is a lasso a weapon?" Yes, it would be, trying to use that lasso to harm.
I got a bunch of D&D nerds in my chat saying if it's a weapon, it can be enchanted.
Oh, it can be enchanted? Oh, there's the answer.
Oh, no.
Right, thank you to our role players, our TPPRGs. Thank you so much.
So if whomst it be wielding it changes whomst whether it's a weapon, like, is it a weapon still if being used? When I think of a guillotine, I think of like retaliatory violence from the peasants against the upper gentry or whatever. Like, is it whomst wielding?
Yeah, but honestly, though, the guillotine is always used the state, and that's why I think the people rise up and go against the ruling class with the guillotine, because it's the symbol of their oppression,
turning the weapon against them, I guess. Yeah,
it could be a great day when the guillotine is no longer associated with violence and is instead used as like a slicer for lettuce or cheese.
Or a melon, maybe a spaghetti.
Well, I think that would be a beautiful.
Hard to cut sometimes.
I think that would be a beautiful thing if we advanced so far as a society where it was seen as less a thing of fear and violence and more of a
kitchen item.
Yeah, like I think that would say a lot of good things about us as a species.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I think I just wanted to end on a fun note, since we are the Transl Squad. Why not talk about the guillotine and how it can be wielded as a weapon? You're welcome, everybody.
I appreciate this thought-provoking philosophical discussion that we've ended on.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Well, with that, I am going to close up my stream for 5 minutes on my own, since I haven't been on stream in like 2.5 weeks. So I need to say hi to everybody, but I'm sure you probably are going to do the same.
Yeah. One last time, translsquad.com, head over there, sign up. And I don't know. Let's build the political trebuchet that will hurl us towards a better future.
Join the Discord, make friends. Before we sign off, let's all do one more round of like, hey, here's who I am and here's where to find. Because I would love it if my followers, if any of you enjoyed conversation tonight, Riverboat Jack and Josie, both of their links are going to be in the description of my video. We never did pronouns also, is the thing that I realized halfway through.
Yeah. So I will just go ahead and I guess start. So Josie Rose C, you can Twitter by that handle, as well as Twitch at twitch.tv/Josie Rose C. I haven't been able stream as much. I guess I'll go ahead and plug why I am running the U.S. Transgender Survey for the National Center for Transgender Equality. And we are going to be starting that rollout next month and actually be launching the survey on October 12th. So if you haven't taken the survey, or you're trans, non-binary, non-conforming, or think you might be, make sure you take it at ustranssurvey.org. I really appreciate all of you, because data is our strength if we are able to collect those stories collectively. So yeah, thank you, and support the only trans community-led survey by trans people for trans people.
And I am Riverboat Jack. I stream about politics, the news, and I debunk conservative propaganda over on twitch.tv/riverboatjack. I don't know, I have a background as a journalist, education in English literature, and I like talking about things in depth and overthinking things quite a bit. So if that kind of tickles your fancy, come check it out.
And I'm Luxander. I'm on YouTube. I'm the odd one out as a YouTube streamer. I talk about politics and mental wellness, I guess. Like, we try to strategize on how to not go crazy, and we check in, like, how are you doing? How are you taking care of yourself? And I'm like, you guys, I'm doing so good about taking walks in the morning or whatever, like trying to like encourage each other. Cause at the end of the day, we all have to be able to like function on a fundamental base level, or none of this organizing is going to work. We're going to be crabby at each other, where it's not going to be good for coalition building. You know, fundamentally taking care of yourselves is an important thing, while we're also trying to grapple with all this politics. So feel free to come hang out if you want anything to do with that.
Oh, and pronouns for everybody. She, her.
I use it, its, or they, them, I guess. Josie, you're muted.
Oh, I said she, her, and what is that, I guess? I was like, it's they, them, I guess. What was that?
I used they, them for a really long time, and I'm just kind of, I don't really care about that one. I prefer it, its, but I'm like not really going to push it if people are like squirrely about it for whatever stupid ass reason. Like, I'm not going to argue with you about my pronouns. So there's a secondary option.
Got it. Yeah, because I was making sure, checking in, you know, talking about that. Well,
I'm like 13 years deep into knowing that I'm trans, so I just don't fucking care anymore, is fundamentally what it comes down to.
Oh my gosh, really quick personal story. So I was at the airport yesterday. And I was walking out of the airport, and I really needed to pee really, really bad. And I'm walking, and like the girl bathroom is locked. The other woman's bathroom is locked. All the men's bathrooms are open. It's like a weird bizarro world. Walking down, and then the final girl bathroom, like before the baggage claim, was also locked. And I'm like, this is out of control. So I start to go, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm just going to use the boys' bathroom, which I'm like, all right, I'm really reached the state in my transition where I'm like, this is a viable option possibly. And as I'm trying to walk in, this janitor from the other side of the fucking terminal goes, ma'am, that's a guy's bathroom. You can't go in there. And I'm like, I really need to pee. And then it's like, go downstairs. And I was like,
what the hell?
I know. And I was just like, I was gender policed out of the boys' bathroom. And it was like one of those situations where I was just like, I almost said this. I go, if I use the urinal with my penis, does that count? I wanted to say that so badly. But it was like that Thanos meme of like, what did it cost? It's like, it cost everything. So I didn't know how to feel. I thought it was really funny. I was like, wow, okay, I see how this is going now. Anyways, right. Personal story. Sorry for the tangent.
All right. Love y'all.
All right,
Thank you so much for showing up. This has been a fantastic stream, and much love to all of you.
Yeah.
Much love. Speak soon. Let's do it again.
Bye.